Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is J Marie Booklist. Today I'm making a video about transporting specimen. So one of the things that you may be required to do is transport specimen down to the lab. And in the hospital, there's a tube system. So some hospitals have a tube system where you just, the nurses draw the blood, get the specimen and put it in a bag, a little plastic bag, and then tube it on down to the lab. And then some places you don't. So like in the hospital, part of the hospital, so where I worked in ICU, they had a tube system. That whole part had a tube system. And then the other part of the hospital where I used to work, on the main floor, they didn't have a tube system. Why they never built it, I don't know. I guess it would have been too much. But I still don't understand that, because the old hospital, the old part of the hospital did not have a tube system. But when they built the new part where I work, they built the tube system, and then some kind of way they built it to go to the lab and pharmacy and ER. So I don't understand why they couldn't do the rest of that. But anyway, that's not for me to concern myself with. But there are 3 ways that specimen can be transported down to the lab. It's either the nurse or you taking it, tubing it down if you have a system, and third is when the phlebotomist comes to draw the blood, and if your floor has a bin, then they take it down with them. So on the main floor didn't have a tube system. So usually the phlebotomist will come up and draw the blood. Nurses could do it, but for the most part, it was always the phlebotomist. And if the nurses did, like, say there was a specimen, say they needed a specimen, like a urine specimen or stool specimen, well then, that was different. The phlebotomist is not going to draw that. They're going to collect that, so the nurse collects it, CNA, whoever, and then they will put it in the bin. They will put it in the plastic, and then they put it in the bin, and then the phlebotomist would take it. Or the nurse or the CNA will walk it down. It was just usually one of the things. I never took anything to the lab, really, when I worked on the main floor. When I went over to the ICU, we had the tube system, so we tubed everything down. And I went to the lab more, even though we had a tube system. It's kind of funny. I went to the lab more when we had our tube system, but I will always go and pick up our blood. So if a patient needed blood, I would go pick it up. And I just walk on back there and just go on by my business, get the blood, sign off, verify, and everything, and then bring it back, give it to the nurse, and that was that. So I always went and got the blood, because they couldn't tube the blood to the floor unless it was like an emergency. Like if they called a special code. That's the only thing I can think of. If they called a special code, then they can tube the blood up. And then of course, they couldn't give us two units. It had to be, is that right? 1 unit at a time? Because you can't draw blood. Is that right? Unless it was emergency. Yeah, they would do 1 at a time. I think the only time we could get two like units of blood is if the patient was getting dialysis. I want to say if they're getting dialysis. But anyway, I went more to the lab when I was in the ICU, when we had a tube system, than I did when I worked on the main floor. And then our sister floor, same thing. We would just tube it down, and they would tube it up and things like that. And I know in the other ICU, the secretary, they would ask the secretary to take it, because it wasn't that far, because they were closer to the lab than I was on either floor. So the secretary would take it down. So I took it down a few times when I worked over there. Usually the nurse would take it down just to get off the floor, just get out the ICU. But those are the ways that you transport specimen. one things that you don't do is you don't wear a glove. So like when I would take it down, let's say our tube system was down and I would walk it down, I didn't wear a glove. So I would have the bag, but I wouldn't wear a glove, because you don't want to wear gloves walking the hallways. Just like you don't wear a mask walking the hallways, or wear a gown walking the hallways, because when you gown up, that means you go into a room that's isolation. So if you come out the room and you walking around with it's gross. Okay, like ugh, like get from over here. That's why, like in the ICU or just even on the main floor, if a patient is in isolation, the family goes in and gown up, and then they come out, all gowned up to nurse station. Like if you don't move, because you got cooties on you, and you don't need to be spraying cooties. You got to take that off before you leave the room, and then come out here and tell us what you want. But you don't walk around with gloves, because it's the appearance, because it's dirty. That's why you use it, and now you're walking around the hall with it. So you don't walk around the hall with a glove, no matter what you're carrying, because it should be in the bag. Sometimes it's double bagged, and if you need to, you can put it in like a little box, a little box, and carry it to the lab, and then sit it up there, sign it in, and then bring the box back. But you don't walk around with a glove on. That's kind of gross. And then of course you don't have food with you. You don't do any of that. And that was like part of our CBL. We had to do a CBL every year on everything. Every year we had to do CBL, and CBL is computer-based learning. And that was always one of the things about transporting blood and stuff to the lab, and different scenarios. And of course, you don't take any food with you. You don't take the blood or the you don't go here with all that. You go straight to the lab, and then you go do what you're gonna do. So that's all I got for you today. You can follow me on my blog. It's jmariebooklets.com. That's where I talk about being a health unit coordinator. And I have a 30-minute consultation for, I think it's $25. So if you want to talk to me about being a health unit coordinator, you can always just go to my blog, click on that link, pay, and then we can schedule a time to talk. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.